Page, Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today, and this is Capital Download. With us this week, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
You gave the Tea Party response to the State of the Union this week.
To begin with, we absolutely must pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution.
After the Republican response, is there a battle going on for the soul of the Republican Party?
Not necessarily, but I would say that the Tea Party has always existed somewhat independent of the party. I think the Tea Party is often equal parts chastisement to both parties for spending too much, for running up the debt. You know, when President Bush was up here, we weren't too happy either. They were doubling the debt. And we're particularly unhappy with this president who's tripling and quadrupling the debt. And we find it a little bit galling that he could say last night, oh, I've reduced the deficit by $2 trillion. Well, in what universe? He added $6 trillion. Does that mean because he didn't add $8 trillion, he's reduced it $2 trillion? What kind of logic could he possibly use to say he's reduced the deficit?
And yet you say the Republican Party bears some responsibility there, too.
Yeah, I think there are Republican sacred cows and Democrat sacred cows. And on the Republican side, we need to admit that not every dollar spent on the military is wise or sacred or without problems. And Democrats need to admit that entitlements are really fueling this problem. 2/3 of the budget are entitlements, and we have to do something about them.
Karl Rove has started a new group, the Conservative Victory Project, which says it wants to nominate more electable Republicans. The Tea Party is getting some blame for some disappointments in Senate races last year. Is that fair?
I mean, there's always people on both sides. When someone wins, they say, oh, that's great. And when someone loses, they say, oh, this was the problem. You know, in 2010, there were some candidates who didn't win who were Tea Party candidates, but there were quite a few who did. And there was quite a bit of enthusiasm. I think in 40 years, you haven't seen hundreds of thousands of people gathering on the mall upset about public policy. And so I think the Tea Party movement's a big movement. It has been good for the Republican Party, but they're not afraid to tell Republicans when Republicans aren't being frugal with our money either.
Well, is it better to nominate a moderate Republican who wouldn't agree with you on some issues who can win in a general election, or is it better to nominate a conservative Republican that you believe is on the right side of these issues, even if it's going to be harder for that candidate to win?
See, I've never been a party person. I don't think it's as important whether people are all Republicans or Democrats. I think it's important whether or not they believe in balancing the budget, whether they believe in freeing up the economy to have low taxes and low regulation. Those are important values. But which party you're in isn't as important to me. So if I could elect a Republican and say, oh, well, gosh, yeah, but this Republican believes in deficits of trillions of dollars and high taxes, but I could get him in because he lives in New England and that's all they want up there, I would say I wouldn't be for it. I'd rather be for people who believe in something, whether you live in New England or California or Texas.
Even if it means you have a harder time winning that general election?
I'm not interested in really who wins or which party wins. I'm interested in what is good for our country, and I think deficits are bad for the country, high taxes are bad, and lots of regulations really put a kibosh on economic development and prosperity.
Who speaks for the GOP now?
Well, you know, we elect leadership and we have chairmen of the party and things like that, but it's a big party, so a lot of people do. If you look at the Democrat Party, there's some diversity over there, too, so they don't always agree on everything. In fact, I think they've been a better party at bringing people together who don't always agree with each other. And to be a big and pluralistic party, you need people who don't agree on every issue. So I am a believer in the Republican Party being inclusive of people who don't agree. I'm not going to get my way all of the time, but it doesn't mean I'm going to change my beliefs.
What is the Tea Party role with the Republican Party now? And I wonder if you dispute the idea that after that incredible start in 2010, including your own election, that the Tea Party is now on something of a wane.
I think you saw enormous rallies happening centered around two issues that got the Tea Party started. The bank bailouts, which we opposed, and many Republicans supported the bank bailouts. And it's an interesting thing that we actually have in common with the Occupy Wall Street. We don't like to see government helping very rich people and giving special favors to big people. So we opposed the bank bailouts. We really despise the fact that people were making $100 million a year, run their bank into the ground, goes bankrupt, and ordinary taxpayers are having to pay, and that guy or that woman gets $100 million the next year in bonuses. So we didn't like that. And so I think the Tea Party is part of something that is distinct and at the same time has things in common with the Republican Party, but is distinct in many ways.
But you're getting some pushback now from establishment Republicans. You had Haley Barbour, the former governor of Mississippi, raising some questions about whether donors should continue to support the Club for Growth, for instance.
I think that the party's a big party. We're open to a lot of people, but we're big believers in the marketplace of ideas and in competition, and that's what will happen here. And anytime you have primaries, there will be competition. But I think if someone thinks that a leader's going to come in and hand select the candidates, they hand selected Charlie Crist, who's a Democrat now and probably always was a Democrat in Republican clothes. And so it didn't work out so well for them, you know. And so I think hand-picking candidates isn't a good thing either. Will you sometimes get candidates who don't resonate in a general election? Maybe, but I think the process of electing people, I would hate to see a process where there were not primary elections, where there were hand appointments by select leaders.
To talk about a couple of specific issues, we don't think of the Tea Party as really standing for immigration reform as a kind of fundamental value. And you said that we should look at immigrants as assets, not liabilities. Do you think there should be a path to citizenship for immigrants who are here illegally at this time?
Yes, I think there should be and will be. I think it shouldn't be a path that puts them in front of other people applying for citizenship, but as long as they don't go to the front of the line, as long as they want to work, as long as they're willing to be on a pathway that doesn't include welfare benefits and cash payments, and as long as it includes work, I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that.
Do you think that bill will pass this year?
Well, I think the question always is you can be for that, but you also can be for a secure border, and I'm for a secure border. I won't vote to normalize the 11 million undocumented workers if it means we're going to invite 11 million more to break the law. You have to have a secure border. So I have an amendment that I will introduce that says we do things in a stepwise fashion over about a 5-year period. Each year we vote on whether the border is secure. There's a report, but not just some vague report that says, yeah, we're doing it, a report that comes from the administration and is voted on by Congress and has to be passed each year to say the border is secure.
An issue that's come up in recent days are these drone attacks of alleged terrorists, including sometimes American citizens. And you say that we should not tolerate secret lists of American citizens who can be killed without trial. What kind of oversight do you want to see?
You know, if you murder someone, I want you to be punished, but I'm for having a trial. I'm for having a judge look at the evidence as well as a jury. If you're an American citizen and you go over and you're engaged in a battlefield and you're shooting at us, you can be killed without a trial. That will happen. But if you're over there and you're blogging and inciting violence and you're interested in the overthrow of the United States and you've denounced your citizenship, I think you should be tried for treason. We have a process for that, but we're not using it. I think it's appalling that the president could decide this. I'm holding up and today announcing that I'm going to hold up John Brennan's nomination because he was asked a very specific question by Senator Wyden. Can you kill an American with a drone in America? And he refused to answer the question. He's been asked this in writing, and they haven't answered this question. And can you imagine if they're not willing to answer this question, that they actually believe they have the power through a politician, through a political office, to kill an American in the United States without a trial? I find that very, very worrisome.
So you're going to put a hold on his nomination?
Absolutely.
And if need be, would you try to filibuster it?
We're going to do whatever it takes to get the answer. Can the government, and does the government, the president himself, claim the power to unilaterally decide to kill an American in America without a trial? That is just appalling and beyond belief that anybody could support that. They need to answer it specifically, and they need to say no, they don't. The CIA is not supposed to be operating in the United States by law, but he's unwilling to answer whether he can kill an American with a drone in America without a trial. I find it very worrisome.
Talking about guns, do you think any action on gun control would be an appropriate step to take this year?
You know, I'm not sure of what would be, to tell you the truth. I think we mistake the whole thing. Most of these terrible tragedies are happening where you have 100% gun control. There are no guns allowed in schools. We have a complete ban on gun in schools and malls and other places, and that's where the shootings are occurring. So I'm a big believer that guns can be and are a deterrent to crime, and that those who want to ban guns don't quite understand the deterrence or the self-defense aspect of guns. So I would allow concealed carry in school by teachers and principals. I think it'd be a great idea to be able to have some kind of self-defense. If my kids were at a school and under attack, I would hope that the principal would have a gun in the desk and be able to try to stop it until the police could get there.
Universal background checks, would you oppose that?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If they were voluntary, no. If you're going to mandate background checks on everyone, how will you check to find out if everybody's doing it? You would have to have some kind of registry of gun sales. I'm concerned about what happened in Westchester, New York recently when they published who has a gun and who doesn't have a gun. One, if you publish the list and you find out I have guns in my house, now I'm a target for thieves. If you publish a list and say I don't have a gun in my house, I'm still a target for thieves. I find it very worrisome that we would publish registers. I also am concerned about future leaders who may come along who may use that list to then confiscate guns.
Your dad, Texas Congressman Ron Paul, ran for president a couple times. Do you want to follow in his footsteps? Would you like to run for president?
We're thinking about it. We haven't made any kind of decision and won't for a couple of years. I do want to be part of the national debate. I want to be part of deciding what the Republican message is and who the Republican leaders are. I think the Republican Party is in danger of becoming a permanent minority party if we keep going in the same direction we are going. So I think there needs to be more of a libertarian influence in the Republican Party. We're no longer competitive on the West Coast or in New England, but I think we could be with a little more of a libertarian bent.
You're up for re-election in 2016, so you might have to run for both offices at once. Could you do that?
There probably is a way that could be done, but we haven't finalized any plans.
And one last question. Watching your dad run for president, what did you learn that you would apply if you choose to do that yourself?
I think the one thing about watching presidential elections, not just my father but other things, is that I think they're based on, and people base their vote not just on the details of it, they base it on whether they like the person and whether they believe the person. So I think genuineness goes a long way. I think people saw my dad as genuine. He didn't win the election, but boy, the young kids turned out by the droves, both at Berkeley and at Liberty University. Tens of thousands of kids would show up to hear him, more so than almost any other candidate other than President Obama. And so I see that people have to vote on likability. When you looked at Romney versus Obama, the public liked Romney on a lot of issues and thought he was more competent to handle things. But when you ask them who they liked better, they liked President Obama better.
Senator Rand Paul, thank you for joining us on Capitol Download.
Thank you.